Welcome to Simply Christianity. In this video, I want to talk about the big question. What is the purpose or meaning of life? Now, I think that Christianity gives the best purpose or meaning in life and the best explanation for why we have this sense and purpose of meaning in life. And I'm going to contrast that to an atheistic or materialistic, which just means that the only thing that exists is biological and physical material, so there's no supernatural, there's no soul, etc. So this atheist materialistic worldview and how they explain this desire for purpose and meaning in life. So first, let's talk about Christianity and what Christianity has to say about this desire. So first it says that this desire is something real and something that needs to be filled. And Christianity simply states that its fulfillment comes from why we were created. We are created to be with God. We are created to know and love God. So our purpose and meaning in life is to do what we are created for, to know and love God. And what this looks like is worshiping God the Father, treating Jesus as Lord and Savior, and letting the Holy Spirit work through us. So these three persons of the Trinity interact with us in different ways according to Christianity. And all these ways ultimately lead to the basic idea that we ought to know and love God. So this satisfies this deep void that human beings have because in our sin we fell away, so we no longer see this purpose fully, so we have this hole, and it fills it very nicely. It gives us this ultimate purpose and meaning in life that is much greater than anything else that we try and fill it with. We try and fill it with money, we try and fill it with power. People have tried to fill it with many, many things, and they're never satisfied. The only way we can be satisfied is by knowing and loving God as fully and as best as we can. This purpose and meaning then, I think, gives rise to this idea that other things then have meaning in life. What do I mean by this? So you call them sub-purposes, if you will. So my relationship with my family, friends, and humanity in general is something very meaningful to me. And I find purpose in establishing good relationships and having very deep and intimate connections with other people. This purpose of life, this meaning of life, stems directly from knowing and loving God. And let me explain why. Christians believe that other human beings are creations of God as well. And if we are to know and love God, part of loving God is loving His creation. And His special creation is us, human beings. We're created in His image. So it's even more important that we love and interact with the creation that is in His image that we're around with today. So it explains why we find human beings worth something, why we think that relationships with human beings are worthwhile. Another thing, a scientific advancement. So many people find purpose and meaning in learning about the world around them, not just scientific advancement, any kind of knowledge advancement, any pursuit of truth. And why is this? Well, according to Christianity, it makes sense because knowing and loving God, we want to know God. How do you know someone? Well, you have to, talk with them, so that includes prayer. But say the person is a painter, an author, a sculptor, something where they produce any kind of work. If you truly love them and you want to know about them, you inquire about their work. You invest in it. You enjoy it, especially if they're an artist of some type. You enjoy it. You look at their paintings. You look at their sculptures. You read their books. If you wanted to know Shakespeare, you wouldn't find everything you wanted to know about him in the plays that he wrote. But reading those plays gives you great insight into the kind of person he was and other information that you wouldn't just be able to get by just talking with someone. Looking at what they've produced is important, and the same is with God, which is why we value truth and value knowledge here on earth. We value history because, again, other people, what God has done through the world. We value science because how God created this vast and great universe we find ourselves in. And any other kind of pursuit of knowledge and truth that I just don't have time to go into. Justice is another thing that we find meaning in. And this, again, can be explained because we ought to value human life because God values human life. And if we truly love and know God, we'll truly value what He values. And He values human life. He values justice. So all of these things that we find meaningful and we can derive purpose from are very well and very easily explained in the Christian worldview. And then Christianity worldview ultimately rises to this main, ultimate purpose, meaning of life, which is to know and love God. So that brings us now to atheism. And recently I've been watching some atheist YouTube videos, some articles online, and they followed a rough, almost a rough pattern, if you will, of argumentation about this issue, this purpose argument, this purpose debate. And I wanted to share it with you because I think there are some major flaws in many of these popular arguments because they don't take the atheistic or materialistic worldview to its logical conclusion. They want to have something that feels nice to them. They don't want to come to the logical conclusion of atheism, which I think is quite dark, personally. So, one video in particular I think provides a really good outline because I've seen it recently, and I think it's a week old by the time this video will be uploaded. And it's a video by a channel called Holy Kool-Aid. He's an atheist YouTuber named Thomas Westbrook, and he produces content that argues against Christianity and argues for atheism and materialism or naturalism, which is, again, this belief that the only thing that really exists is the material world. And in his video, one of his most recent videos, by the time of this video, of course, is called, I think it's called The Purpose of Life, or What is the Meaning of Life, something, generic like that. And in that video, he argues what he considers to be the atheist answer to this question, what is the purpose of life? And I think there's some severe flaws in his argumentation that I want to address. So the first thing that atheists will bring up, and again, all these videos and articles I've been reading and the videos I've been watching follow a very, very similar pattern. So the first thing that they will bring up is they'll say that, Christianity or religion in general, when they try and tell you that life has this ultimate purpose or meaning, it's just wishful thinking. And to me, that doesn't really prove anything. Just because something is wishful thinking doesn't mean it's true or false, right? So for one, that's, to me, is the non sequitur. It just doesn't provide anything to the argument. So let's say it's just wishful thinking, and they'll say that atheism or materialism leads you to this belief that there can't be a purpose or meaning in life, and I think that's totally true. I give them that fully. There is no purpose or ultimate purpose or meaning in life. But then somehow this is beautiful and wonderful, and to me, I just step right back right there, and I really want to fight hard against that statement. Human beings have this innate desire. And atheists actually admit this because they say the reason why humanity has developed so many religions, the reason why humanity finds itself to be so religious is because of this desire. And they even call religion a crutch to fulfill this need, this desire. So obviously, human beings value this ultimate purpose or meaning in life if they try and find it in many, many, many different ways, including many, many fake and false religion. So atheists, to me, already admit that in whenever they call religion a crutch, they've already admitted that, yeah, purpose and meaning is something that we desire, something that we would like. But then at the same time, they say that purpose and meaning, this ultimate purpose and meaning, the fact that it doesn't actually exist is this beautiful, wonderful thing, that life has no ultimate purpose. And that just makes absolutely no sense. And even in their argumentation, they admit that they show that they have this desire for some kind of meaning. They really want to hold on to it. And let me explain why. Because they don't just stop there. And this is where they get kind of deceitful, because they make a couple different claims that are mutually, they kind of undermine each other. So the first thing they'll say is that it's wonderful, it's this beautiful, almost like clean slate. We don't have any purpose. But again, as I've already argued, that just goes against human nature. In general, we desire an ultimate purpose. We need to be pushed to do things. We don't like sitting around the house being lazy. Yes, to some people that sounds great and amazing, but everyone that I've ever come in contact to always strives for something. They're fighting for something. They're looking for something. Whether or not that something is good or true or not doesn't matter. What they're trying to do, though, is they're trying to find some reason for why they're here. And if it turned out that there was no reason why people were here, it would be a much darker place than I think even atheists are willing to admit. But that brings me to the next kind of argument in these videos and articles, and in this video in particular that Holy Kool-Aid produced. Then they'll say that a overarching purpose is almost like a slave owner, a master, and we're slaves to it. And so it's freeing when we realize that there is no purpose. And I could argue against that. I don't really feel enslaved by my purpose. Again, we look for these purposes. We look for these meanings. But I don't want to go too far down that trail because I think that just gets to more emotional territory, and I don't want to deal with that right now because I can't argue about my emotions or their emotions. But simply put, I don't think I feel like I'm oppressed by having this sense of meaning or purpose. And then, after saying that having no purpose is beautiful and that it's freeing, they'll give you the reason why it's freeing. And this is another place where I'm going to really kind of step back and push back against atheism because I think, especially the video that Holy Kool-Aid produced, but again, just in general, it makes no sense, even given their other arguments, how they come to the conclusions they do. So they say that it's freeing because we get to choose our own meaning in life. But well, wait a second, I thought you said that having no meaning in life was good, was beautiful. And I think, again, this demonstrably proves that they know that that's not true. They know that a world where we have an ultimate purpose or have meaning is a better world than one we don't. Again, that doesn't mean it's true or not. So they could still argue, what I would consider intellectual atheists will still argue that, yeah, that doesn't matter. Yes, it's darker than the Christian vision, but I think it's true. That, to me, is much more honest than this trying to prey on people's emotions, saying, yes, atheism is a nice worldview and makes sense, and provides you everything Christianity does. I think that is ultimately false. And you see it right here. They know that meaning and purpose in life is something we desire and something we want and something that we value. So they'll argue that, Christians will argue then, a lot of worldly, what we consider vices or what people treat as meaning. So if someone strives for a lot of money, or alcohol or sex, these things are what we consider vices. This Holy Kool-Aid YouTuber said, but we can derive some meaning from these things. A little bit of meaning, but some meaning from these things. Money can help achieve other ends. Sex, can be beautiful in its own way when done appropriately. And Christians would agree, but probably differ under the definition of appropriate. And what was the other thing? Oh, alcohol. And Christians are in debates over what alcohol, but he would say, alcohol provides certain benefits. But he would argue that these things shouldn't, these things become vices and shouldn't be what we really strive for, shouldn't be the meanings we strive for, because they are short-term, they don't last, and they can be abused. Okay, I totally agree with that. I think that these things are vices when they are abused and mistreated, and they can be wonderful. And I think the reason they can be wonderful is based in the ultimate purpose of knowing and loving God. But back to their arguments. So then, they provide what they would consider to be good meanings to derive from life. And so these things are intimate, close-knit relationships with other human beings, scientific advancement, and I think justice. I'll stick to those three. There might be more. I don't know if justice was one. But I don't think this affects his argument whatsoever. I don't think it paints it in a negative light either. The first two I know for sure were in that video where it talks about human relationships and scientific advancement. But my first questions to these, and he just states this, he doesn't provide anything in terms of argumentation for why we ought to derive meaning from these things. So I have a couple arguments about why in the atheist or materialistic worldview it doesn't make any sense to say that these things ought to be where we derive meaning from. The first thing is that the general concept, backing up a little bit, but the general concept of getting to pick your own meaning in life doesn't understand what it means, what people mean when they say the meaning of life or the purpose of life. If you get to choose what your meaning is, what your purpose in life is, if you get to choose, all you're doing is just asserting what pleasures you. You get to assert, yes, I like this, so I am going to make it the purpose of my life. That is totally arbitrary. It is not what we mean by purpose or meaning. What we mean by purpose or meaning is something above ourselves. And so atheists or materialists shouldn't use the same word, meaning or purpose, if they're going to talk in these terms of, choosing your own meaning. All you're doing is you're just asserting that this pleasures me, or I enjoy doing this. And that is entirely arbitrary, because guess what? You can enjoy doing some pretty terrible, terrible things. And that's what I'm going to get to next. So he says that we ought to value human relationships. And at the risk of sounding like a toddler, I'm going to ask why. Why ought we value human relationships? Christianity gives what I would consider a very good, if not the best, explanation for why. If we know and love God, we will want to know and love other people who are created in his image. It is very strong explanatory power for why we derive meaning from relationships. An atheist will say we ought to derive meaning from relationships. I don't know what their argument would be, actually. If you are an atheist who's watching, please comment below about why you value human relationships and why you think other people ought to value human relationships. Because my contention is that if we get to pick our own meaning, then you cannot say that someone like a sociopath or someone who does not like other people, in fact, someone who hates other people, you can't say they can't derive meaning from putting other people down. What on earth do you get to base that statement in? I don't see it. Please comment below if you have an argument for it. I'd be happy to discuss it with you in the comments. I don't understand where you get to say that atheism leads to this idea that we ought to value human relationships. Science is another one. I don't understand why we ought to value science or truth. Why? If you can give me a good answer, I am more than willing to read it and look at it. But then my next point is that the criteria for why money, alcohol, and sex were bad meanings in life fit for human relationships and scientific advancement and justice. Human relationships don't last forever. Actually, a lot of them last for less than a lifetime. They can be abused, and I'm not just talking about abusive relationships, but you can be too, you can abuse your relationship with someone else at the detriment of others and the detriment to those around you, because you invest into someone more than you ought to, given the other people in your life. You can abuse relationships. You can abuse scientific advancement. You just look at the 20th century and the horrid atrocities committed in the name of science during the 20th century. It's gross. You just research some of the human experimentation done during the Second World War, etc., etc. It can be abused. Don't tell me it can't be abused, and that's not science. Science, can be abused. And scientific advancement, in the sense of advancing culture, doesn't last forever. Cultures decline. Advancements can be lost, etc. So, ultimately, these meanings suffer the same, faults as the other meanings you said. So, at best, you have a spectrum of, this thing is okay, this thing's a little better. But it's a spectrum. It's not just, we shouldn't really derive meaning from this, and we really should derive meaning from these things. But again, these are value judgments that you have no basis to make. Why can't I value power and money above everything else, above human relationships? Why can't I do that? I don't think materialism has an answer for that. So just to briefly recap, my points have been, atheism does not provide any kind of satisfactory answer for why we have this deep void in ourselves. At best, they can say that it's just there. It's also, I think, very deceitful to say that it's wonderful that there is nothing there, that it's great that there is no meaning in life. That's just deceitful, and their following arguments after this statement, about what they derive meaning in life, about you get to pick your own, prove that they know that there's something beautiful about having a purpose and having meaning. So I think it's just, they demonstrate that assertion is false. And then again, being able to choose your own meaning takes the meaning out of that phrase. If you choose your own meaning in life, you're just, you're basically stating to the world, this is what I like to do, this is what I get my pleasure from. And then finally, they still want to say that certain things we ought to derive meaning from. And that word ought is very important because that implies that there's something outside of us which tells us what we ought to value. And again, I can just ask toddler questions the whole time. They might say we ought to value this because, well, it helps human flourishing. Why do we want to help human flourishing? Oh, because you're a human. That doesn't give an answer for why. Just because I'm a member of the human species doesn't mean I ought to value the human species. You can't give me those value judgments if you have an atheistic or materialistic worldview. However, the Christian worldview does provide you a very beautiful outlook about an ultimate purpose and meaning that we can throw our entire life behind, that then trickles down to all the other areas we find meaning in this life. And I think this explanatory power of Christianity is really a good thing. It gives some weight behind Christianity. It might not prove it to be true. I'll revise that statement. It doesn't prove it to be true, but it definitely throws a lot of weight behind it. And it says that yes, materialism goes against a lot of our instincts, a lot of our experience, and even a lot of our rationality because of those things. So Christianity makes a lot more sense of our experience and our inner desires. So with that, I want to ask a few technical questions and then sign off here. But for this video, I stepped a little bit farther away from the mic. Please let me know if it made me too quiet or if it didn't change anything at all. I just felt like seeing my whole face would be better. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe below. What that does is it not only helps you stay up to date with information, but it helps me because it puts my videos higher up in search results and related videos. And likewise, for the same reason, if you liked this video and you think this content is worthwhile, please hit the like button. Again, what that does is it raises the chance someone will see this, which is the purpose. I want this to be out there for people to see, for people who are on the fence or whatnot, to be able to see that Christianity does make sense and makes sense of a lot of these big questions. So please like and subscribe, and comment below any questions you might have about this video, any questions you might have in general, any technical advice, technical comments, anything at all. Please fill the comments up. Let me know what you're thinking. And I will see you next week.